All right, well, this is exciting. Not surprising, but exciting to see so many of you here. So welcome back, Rabbi Panitz, to our community and congregation. A longtime friend and collaborator of ours here at Christ in St. Luke. So this is going to be a joyful thing. And this is a project he approached us about taking some of these Old Testament representations by Hollywood and doing some discussion and some analysis. So I'm going to talk logistics for a sec before I turn it over to Rabbi Panitz to talk through the introduction to this whole series, and that'll set you up for the next 5 weeks. So we're going to be meeting the next 5 Sundays, 9:15 to 10 a.m. here in this place. We've got a little projector here that's going to help us, but we're not going to watch the movies together on Sunday morning. I know. We've got other programming that you can be a part of if you like. Maybe, hopefully not at cross purposes, but at least conflicting.
Thank you.
The next week we start. Where do we go here? So you have here in front of you a handout that explains how you can access these movies online yourself. Okay? So we will get some more handouts for those who don't have them, so who have come late or who need them on your way out, make sure to grab them. This is your syllabus. Your job in the next 5 weeks is to watch these movies during the week and then come on Sundays ready to listen and perhaps discuss them a little bit, so that will be the time for conversation and teaching, not watching. Does that make sense? Yes. So do your homework. It's not reading. It's just a movie, and great movies at that. So that's all you need to do to participate in this series for the next few weeks. This will run through Eastertide and wrap up in time for Pentecost. And then on May 14th, Rabbi Panitz is going to do double duty and not only teach our class, but also preach at our 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. services. So. Yes, Pat?
Somebody mentioned here that 1923 may be silent. Is it silent?
It is silent. It is silent. So don't go thinking, what's wrong with my TV? Don't go hammering on anything. It's not supposed to make sense.
So they have captions, I hope. Okay.
We'll talk about all that. The movies themselves. That's Rabbi Panitz's department. All right. Any questions about logistics for me before we get into the content?
Yeah, when people find out about this after today, we need a bigger room.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll see how much progress we make on the construction this week.
We'll walk through that sea when we get to it.
Nice. All right. Rabbi Panitz, I turn it over to you, and we'll wrap up around 10 in time for everybody to come to church if you haven't been already. So, Rabbi Panitz, it's wonderful to have you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the gracious words.
Of course. All right, I'm going to slip out here.
Friends, as we were just gathering a few minutes ago, Jim walked up to me and reminded me of a Hebrew blessing with which I began a sermon a couple of years ago. I'd like to repeat it because it's a prayer that we say in our Jewish tradition the first time we do something. And this is the first time I've ever taught in this space. I believe it was a youth lounge or something like that. So here's the prayer. Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you, O Lord. Eloheinu melech ha'olam, our God, sovereign of the universe. Shehecheyanu, you've kept us alive. V'kiyamanu, you've sustained us. V'higiyanu lazeman hazeh, and you've brought us to this moment. Amen. Amen. It's such a delight to be here. My wife, who often just takes it exactly, said, "Oh, now you're going to your favorite congregation." Although I do have a wonderful representative from Temple, Israel, Shirley. Thank you for coming. As Christians and as Jews, we are united in our reverence for the Hebrew Bible. We may have different lenses that help us frame it in our respective ways, consistent with our two understandings, but the Bible itself is our important shared heritage. In the past half century, an important field of inquiry has matured. And this field of inquiry is a synthesis of two different disciplines of study. The first discipline is the study of the Bible, which has been going on for thousands of years. The second discipline is part of what we call cultural history, the study of history. And it is a study of the way in which throughout history people have understood the Bible. And we call this branch of study, quote, reception history. You can have reception history of different texts, of the classic Latin texts, for example. Now, how did they understand it in the Renaissance was quite different than how they understood it in the 12th century. So the reception history changes. At another time, I might be able to make the argument and show you how the reception history of the Epistle to the Romans has changed dramatically since the 1960s, with very positive impact on Christian-Jewish relations. But that's, of course, for another time. So this is just to the idea of reception history. It used to be called history of interpretation, or if you want to go to seminary, history of exegesis. That's a good seminary word, isn't it? Exegesis. The difference, though, is that reception history does not restrict interpretations only to the normative ones. Offbeat, wacko, left-field interpretations of today may become tomorrow's normative interpretations, and we can study them today too. Moreover, reception history does not restrict itself by medium. And so there could be a ballet, there could be a stage play, there could be an opera, which is part of the reception history of a work of the Bible. Handel's oratorios would be part of the reception history of the Hebrew Bible. And for about a century plus, the cinema has been a medium for the reception history of the Bible. That's what interests me. And I am slowly hatching a book that I intend to finish up when I finally retire from active congregational service, that I intend to call See, O Israel. You know the prayer, Hear, O Israel. The movies, as you know, they're not always a spoken medium, but they're always a visual medium. So I intend to call this book See, O Israel, and to make it a contribution to understanding the reception history of the Hebrew Bible, its retellings in film format. And to it, I'm going to bring my various fields of competence, one in the study of the Bible, another one in the study of rabbinic tradition, because there's a lot of rabbinics in these movies that are sometimes not flagged, and also my training as a historian. So what I'm hoping to do with our group today and over the next 4 following weeks is look at 4 important Bible retellings on film. The first will be from 1923, the silent version of C.W. DeMille's The Ten Commandments. You're all familiar, I would guess, with the 1956 Technicolor.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Edward G. Robinson. Where's your God now, Moses? Right, yeah, we all know that one, right? This has a different cast of characters. Some of it is strikingly similar. After all, it's still the same DeMille, but it's his thinking about it 30 years earlier in the silent era. Very interesting. The second film is Samson and Delilah with Victor Mature and Hedy Lamarr. So that already tells you that this is a spectacle. And as they said, the critics used to say that DeMille was the master of sex, suds, and spectacle. And he felt that somehow that was appropriate for selling spirituality. Selling spirituality. Think about that. The one we're going to look at right after that is only 2 years later, Darrell F. Zanuck, David and Bathsheba. And this movie might remind you of some other films that Zanuck had something to do with. It might remind you of Gentleman's Agreement. It might remind you of 12 O'Clock High. Because Zanuck was willing to take critical look a critical look at what some people said was beyond questioning, even patriotism. You're going to see that in this King David movie. King David is questioning the wars that the Bible uncritically comments him as having led. That you wouldn't have had in another era, but you would have it post-World War II, the Korean era. Are all of our wars just wars? And what if they're not? By the way, after Vietnam, there was another King David movie which made that point much, much more clearly. That's King David starring Richard Gere, but we don't have time for all of these. So I'm doing only one per Bible story. And the last one is, in some ways, the weirdest, but in a good way. That is the 2014 Darren Aronofsky film, Noah, starring Russell Crowe and Jennifer Connelly and Emma Watson, very, very fine cast of actors and actresses. And we're going to see that that film breathes the atmosphere of the 21st century and the mood of religious environmentalism. For those of us who are old enough to remember, the modern environmentalist movement starts, I would say, in the 1960s with the publication of Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. 1970, the first Earth Day. Right? It was not especially thought of as a religious movement. It was a progressive secular movement. It was part of the turbulent 1960s, questioning the Vietnam War, questioning the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about. But it wasn't yet known specifically as a religious undertaking. That began to happen in the 1970s and the 1980s. Religious souls, religious thinkers, people who combined effortlessly their religious lens on life with the causes, the social activist causes that they were espousing, they began to develop a religious language of stewardship for the environment. The Garden of Eden. God tells Adam to tend it as well as till it, to preserve it as well as make it produce. And so that notion shows up very powerfully in this 2014 movie. So as you can see, there are several factors in a retelling that we could be interested in. I'm going to list 3 of them, and I'm going to tell you up front, there's 2 of them that I'm more interested than the third. The third is perfectly interesting, but for the purpose of what we're doing, I'm going to do the first and the third rather than the second. The first is, what is the story being retold, and what is the relationship of the retelling to the story? And I would encourage you, if we're going to do Noah in a given week, to read Genesis chapters 6 through 9 before that week. You don't have to, but if you do, you'll get a clearer sense of what the story, what the telling is, so that you can see the retelling. Now, mind you, the retelling will never be totally straight. And I want to ask you right up front to suspend a tempting judgment. And that tempting judgment is, this is bad because it's not a straight retelling. Retellings by definition are not straight tellings. By definition, they are retellings. And therefore, at their best, well, I'm a rabbi, so I say at their best. Someone might say at their worst. I would say at their best, they're sermonic. Right? They want to build a bridge between the text and the present-day audience. So what is the relationship between the telling and the retelling is something to keep in mind. One of the factors in understanding of any of these films. The second factor is the creativity of the community that produces the film. And it is a whole community: producer, director, screenwriters, actors, artistic directors, cinematographers, editors, and so on and so forth. It takes a village to create a film. But that village has a certain creative stamp. And sometimes we see it notably. I'll be able to show you moments of that, but that's not the main thing I want to talk about. The third part engages me very much as a trained historian. What are the default assumptions of the day and age in which that film was made? We who are no longer in that day and age might see those default assumptions more clearly. And that too will affect what is being done. You see this very clearly when you look at two retellings of the same Bible story. David and Bathsheba, 1951, King David, 1985, are on opposite sides of the decline of imperialism and the Vietnam War and My Lai. And you see very strongly how the default assumptions of 1985 are different than those of 1951 when you contrast those. It might be harder to see when you look at one film, but I'm here to be your guide for that. So that's what we're going to do. We have enough time for me to give you a sampler. So we're going to see one scene now of each of these four films. Now, to your question about the silent film. Silent films are overacted. The direction is what we today would call overacting. So that I want to submit, and you'll see this, I think I'm going to be able to rest my case. When you see the Egyptian taskmaster, the cast of his expression makes it immediately clear what he could have been saying. When you see Miriam, by the way, she's like the it girl of the 1920s. Clara Bow, Polo Negri. Wow, you never thought of Miriam as hubba hubba. But when you see Miriam, you'll immediately know that she's suffering, she's full of love. You know, her solicitude for the thirsty Israelite slaves, you'll see it right away. But we are going to see something called a title card. DeMille does this more than others. He preaches his sermon right away at the title card. In the 1956 one, he speaks it, but here in the 1923 one, he says it. For the other three films, we're just going to see one scene each, and as we watch it, I'll be able to explain why I think that scene is a key that unlocks that particular moment. So let's now go to the Ten Commandments, 1923. You'll hear at the beginning Beethoven's Egmont Overture.
Oh, great.
Which is a very, very powerful choice. Do you want to do the lights at all?
Lights right here.
Now, don't worry about the story. We're not watching that story. We're watching a prologue. Today, I doubt if we'd ever call anyone a Eurasian. Here we go, look at that. Our modern world defined God as a religious complex and laughed at the Ten Commandments as old-fashioned. DeMille is taking a pot shot at Sigmund Freud. You see that? That's a very 1920s thing to do. Freud had just published Religion and Its Discontents. He just published Future of an Illusion. DeMille disagrees. And DeMille makes an astounding historical claim here that World War I is the result of secularism. As a historian, you might not agree with that. Were the ages of faith in the 14th and 15th and 16th centuries filled with peace? No. It's World War I the result of secularism. But that's his stance. And then you're going to see how he uses that notion to depict Pharaoh as the man who does not recognize any God above him. Moses represents we need to live under God. And that's yes.
Can you turn the volume down, James?
Okay, here we go. That's the taskmaster. Unlike the 1956 film, the taskmaster, I don't know if you expect me to say this, the Egyptian taskmaster has a hairy chest. In the 1956 film, the Egyptians all seem to have depilatory. and the quote-unquote Semites, Charlton Heston and so on and so forth. What a Semite. So now these extras were mostly Jewish immigrants living in the Los Angeles area, working in sweatshops. And DeMille hired thousands of them, and he gave, oh, that's Miriam, can you tell? I'm thirsty. You, woman, here, can't you tell? You can see what he's saying.
What was the going wage?
0. Now, do you like that? Defiant, but she has to obey. You can tell. I might make a fan of silent films of her. see that? Water, water. So DeMille had a problem. They were all pasty. They had not been in the sun. They'd been working in sweatshops. So he had his cosmeticians bronze their skin with powder so they looked like they were slaving under the hot sun. I don't want you to be giving him water. Back to work, you dogs. And they're moving this seemingly very, very, very heavy sphinx. The sphinxes were made by a very fine artistic director named Paul Rivet, and they're made of plaster of Paris. So they're not really that heavy, but they look massive, right? What do you make of the font? To me, it looks like fake Hebrew calligraphy. Okay, here comes Pharaoh. By the way, this is not a scene in the Bible. If you read Exodus chapters 1 through 15, you will not see this scene. DeMille makes it up, and all the later filmmakers copy it. This is Midrash, as we would call it. So everyone has to kneel to Pharaoh. Dathan the Discontented. That's the Edward G. Robinson character in 1956. Here it's a very different look. Dathan is quite smug and satisfied in the Edward G. Robinson, right? He's a quisling. But here, just look at the bitterness in his face. That's Pharaoh. Has to choke down his bile. See that?
You know who that actor is?
Yeah, Lawrence. Oh, by the way, many of these are famous actors for their day. Estelle Taylor is Miriam. Charles de Rochefort is Ramesses. Lawrence Butt is Dathan. You're going to see Theodore Roberts, real film star, silent film star, as Moses. He's not going to look like Charlton Heston at all. Now, that's not a Bible quote. But it gets picked up in the later movies as well. And now you're going to see something just horrifying. This really is horrifying, so I have to caution you.
You can see that coming a long time ago.
Look at the horror on the faces of the extras who are portraying the slaves who have to keep moving. The impassive face of the Sphinx. Miriam. We're going to realize that this was Miriam's paramour that she's just lost. She's witnessed him being murdered. You don't think of Miriam as having an intimate life, right? But in this movie, she definitely does.
Is this the original format?
Yes.
It's so tall.
Yeah. Now look at what she does. Lord God of Israel, see the affliction of thy people which are in Egypt, and hear our cry. Exodus 3:7, a subtle misquote. Exodus 3:7 is God speaking to Moses at the burning bush. So I have heard the affliction. So every time you get a DeMille quote, you got to look it up. Okay, well that's far enough for this. So I think you get the idea about how these films work. I'm a big fan of silent films. I think that the lack of dialogue is simply one of the genre limits. I like blank verse, I like sonnets, I like free verse. They're just different genres. You have to understand the genre logic of any one genre. So, what do we see? First of all, we see Pharaoh as being someone displaying depraved indifference to human life. The Israelites are just robots as far as he's concerned. Right? They don't have any human value, and that one scene already established it. So the question that will come up right away is, what's God going to do about that? And right after that, you see Moses. So We're going to go from there, and the movie itself doesn't take you all the way through the Bible. It takes you to a very interesting stopping point. It takes you to the destruction of the golden calf. It doesn't take you to the borders of the Holy Land, like the book of Deuteronomy. So when we talk about this film next Sunday, we have to ask, why does DeMille stop the prologue precisely at the moment when the Israelites are being destroyed by the wrath that follows their sin of the golden calf? So think about that, connect that to the title card that we read. Okay, now we move to the golden age of Hollywood, 1949, Samson and Delilah. This was the first talkie Bible epic. There had been a number of silent epics. Samson and Delilah was DeMille chose it because it's a love story. However, Samson and Delilah loving each other wasn't good enough for him. He had to make a love triangle to propel it more. So he invents an older sister for Delilah that Samson first falls in love with, played by Angela Lansbury. And then Hedy Lamarr is jealous of Angela Lansbury's affection, etc., etc. And Angela Lansbury gets killed, it's not in the Bible, in the wedding feast. And then one of the Philistines has a hankering for Delilah. So we got that love triangle. But her heart is given to Victor, mature Samson. So I'm showing you the money shot here, the destruction of the Philistine temple. This is a DeMille trademark. He knew how to destroy sets. But I want you to notice also the dialogue between Samson and Delilah here. He's already been blinded. He's been taken to the Philistine temple of Dagon, and they want him to kneel down to their God, which is not in the Bible. They just want to make sport of him. So here we have the Philistine. So Delilah is leading the blinded Samson. The crowd is jeering. This might remind you of a Hunchback of Notre Dame or something like that.
Let me feel what was I leaning upon.
Only a little further.
He's asking to be able to lean upon a post. You know why? Because he's going to bring the house down.
Humble yourself before their God, Samson. Lead it.
The house of this temple stands on these columns.
Yes, kneel.
The stone is cool. I'll rest here.
Let him be scourged until he turns from his God.
So what we have here is DeMille introducing a theme.
Into the courtyard.
The Philistines want Samson to betray his
Death
God.
come to this temple.
Do you remember that from the book of
The
Judges?
hand of the Lord will strike.
Don't be afraid.
You must leave now.
Why must she leave now? Because he doesn't want her to die.
Mind of his with you.
Is that in the Bible?
Go.
See, he wants to emphasize the love story, right? That's how Hollywood sells the Bible.
He will not kneel to any God but his own. The edge of the sword will bend his knees.
Delilah. Have you gone? Delilah.
See the violins.
I pray thee. Strengthen me, O God. Strengthen me only this once.
He's holding up the temple. Samson to his knees beneath the feet of Dagon. This is better than I had bargained for. Well, I'm praise. Oh, John, he's the funniest man I've ever seen.
Just stop laughing now.
It moved.
The column's moving. It has strength of stone. This man has the strength of a devil.
This man has the strength of the devil.
The strength
Did
of
they
a
believe in the devil at that time?
Be more powerful than Samson. Hold it. I'm through.
So he says to his God, be more powerful than Samson. Do you recognize the devil now? Pharaoh saying to the Mormons, be more powerful than the God of the Israelites, putting his son on the altar. That's one of
My eyes
John's
have seen thy glory, O God. Now let me die with my enemies.
That is the God.
He has to go down with the ship.
That's almost identical to the ending of the 1923 film. You're going to see. Very, very similar.
Did that win an Oscar?
I think it did, actually. Okay, now, the next one, you're going to see something that, in my mind, is very much Cold War. In the Cold War, something happened to the Pledge of Allegiance. What happened to the Pledge of Allegiance during the Cold War? Under God. We, as a nation, felt that we are at war with an atheist power. And it almost doesn't matter what religion, but you need to have religion. Right? And our leaders had to be churchgoers. We were concerned about that. You're going to see a journey for King David in this film, which is totally unbiblical. David starts off the film as a cynic. When Uzziah dies trying to hold the ark from falling, David says to Nathan the prophet, it was a hot day, maybe he had a heart condition. He tries to impose a naturalistic frame on it. Now you're going to see David pleading for Bathsheba to be spared, and pleading for the Israelites to be spared from the drought that God has imposed upon them, and, this is a very Christian understanding of David, pleading for David to enjoy a born-again experience, to replace his heart of stone with a heart of flesh. You're going to see in this monologue by Gregory Peck. So here we are. Let's see. David is walking to where the tabernacle is, right outside the walls of Jerusalem, to pray to God. The people have just demanded to stone Bathsheba, and Nathan has said to David, if you want to pray to God for mercy, go and do that. So now David is inside the tabernacle, and listen to his monologue. Now he goes into the Holy of Holies, and here's the Ark of the Covenant. Earlier in the film, someone touched it and died. So keep that in mind when you see what David does.
God. Thou God of my early youth, hear my prayer.
Let thine eyes, which alone see clearly, fall upon thy worthless servant. In all things that I failed thee, and life is a waste. My crimes are many and terrible. To my sons I have bequeathed the evil that is in my blood. I have led my people into misery and want. I have used thee with ingratitude and betrayed thy trust. I have been a faithless shepherd.
It's amazing how Bronze Age Hebrews speak King James English.
I am less than the meanest creature.
Although Gregory Peck does not put on a fake British accent, most of them do.
Yet, O God, I am also thy creation. Take not thy Holy Spirit from me. Thy Spirit, which abode with me in the wilderness. I ask nothing for myself, O God. By my sins, I have put myself beyond the compass of thy forgiveness. But lift thine hand from thy people, who suffer for my crimes. Forgive them the sin that is not theirs, but mine. Let the land thou gavest their fathers flow once more with thine abundance. Let Bathsheba live.
Let Bathsheba live. After all,
Praise thy name.
it's not her fault.
Testify to thy mercy. Show her the loving kindness of thy heart.
I think there's something for
Cleanse her from sin. And let thy punishment fall on thy servant who has earned it. Look not on the sinner who comes before thee, but on the boy he was,
So he's giving a mixed
who
message.
loved thee,
I deserve to die,
and who
I
would
want to
have died
die,
for thee.
but I also want to be reborn.
Make my heart as his. Let the boy live again in his innocence.
Let the boy live again in his innocence.
Grant him thy mercy, and take this David's life.
So he fully expects to die when he touches the ark. And instead we have a crescent. And it starts raining, the crowd is. He goes back in. Nathan says that God is inscrutable, but sometimes we get a glimpse. Bathsheba is praying at the bed like she's about to say, bless the bed that I sleep on. They walk out to the balcony, and a choir from nowhere sings "The Lord is my shepherd." What a great ending. Now, just a couple of minutes. I want to show you just the evolution scene in Noah. It'll remind you of Igor Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring, Fantasia, 1940. The film where it's the history of evolution. But it's updated to the 2014 understanding of cosmology, birth of the solar system, creation of the Earth-Moon double planet system, the early geology of the earth, the early life forms. You're going to see life forms evolving and metamorphosing as Noah speaks. And what Noah is saying is a paraphrase of Genesis 1. In other words, Noah is reading Genesis 1 not as 1925 Dayton, Tennessee Scopes trial, but as a text which, if understood poetically, harmonizes well with the modern scientific understanding of evolution and with the ethical nuance that we need to be the custodians of this earth that God has made. So just that one scene from Noah. It's going to start off in the ark. Everyone is drowning. Noah's family is distressed. They want to see, can't we at least save a few people? Noah says, no, then you missed the point. Humankind is supposed to die. That's not in the Bible. In the Bible, humankind is supposed to continue through Noah. But in this movie, Noah doesn't get that. He thinks that we're supposed to die. He lights a sort of a phosphorescent mineral. The Bible calls it a sohar, which is a stone which can, if lit, produce light. So this is in the status of making it. We hear the screams of the people drowning. Russell Crowe is playing Noah. His wife, Alma, is played by Jennifer Connelly.
Must be something we can do. We can drag ropes.
Soldiers follow. Just people. There is room. There is no room for them.
That's the language of environmentalism.
And the lesson light ruled the nights. And it was evening. A morning. Another day. And the waters of the world gathered together. And in their midst emerged dry land. Another day passed. And the ground put forth the growing things, a thick blanket of green stretching across all creation. And the waters too teemed with life. Great creatures of the deep vast multitudes of fish, some of which may still swim beneath these seas. The sky was strewn with birds. There was evening. There was morning. The fifth day. Now the whole world was filled with young beasts. Everything that creeps, everything that crawls, and every beast that walks upon the ground. And it was good. It was all good. There was light, and air, and water, and soil, all clean and unspoiled, with plants and fish. beast, each
Now
after
we
their own
have
kind,
primates.
all part of the great whole, all in their place, with roles and dance, as paradise, the jewel and the greatest part.
Now,
And the Creator made man, by his side one, father and mother of us all. He gave them a choice.
so the snake here represents a particular
Follow the
Christian vision
temptation of
of
darkness, or hold on to the blessing of light.
So the people are light sheep, but they go for the molten skin of the serpent.
They ate from its
The
base.
serpent as the enemy of human
Their
immortality
innocence
is
is
over in
extinguished.
the Bible. It goes back
And
to
so for
the
the 10 generations since Adam's sin
place in this movie.
has walked within us.
Now we'll watch what happens here. Cain is murdering Abel, and look at what happens to Cain's uniform.
Nation against nation.
See that?
Man
All
against
the uniforms
creation.
of soldiers throughout history,
Divided each other.
to the present day.
We broke the world. We did this.
Noah would not have known what a 20th
Man
century
did
soldier
this.
looks like.
Everything that was beautiful. Everything that was good.
Okay, that's right.
We shattered.
We shattered. We destroyed the creation, so God is judging us. God wants to end humanity and start the world again without us. So that's what Noah comes to believe, and the second half of the film is how Noah has to learn what Genesis 6 told Noah in the first place. No. Humanity is supposed to continue with covenant, not with unchecked violence, but with covenant. He only learns that at the very, very end. So the refusal to kill Isaac in Genesis 22 is here transferred to Noah's refusal to kill his 2 granddaughters. Totally not in the Bible. But dramatically, it makes a lot of sense. So I've given you a little bit of a taste. Imagine that we went to Cold Stone Creamery this morning, and I gave you 4 licks of 4 different flavors of ice cream, and I hope you want to come back and have a whole supper.